Hey everyone, my name is Sean Cotter. I am the executive director for Wicked Queer, Boston's LGBTQ plus film festival, and I have the pleasure of having Jess Ziedman, who is the writer and producer of Tahara, and also director Olivia Peace with us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you here.
No, it's good to be here.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Um, Boy, I really love your film. Coming of age stories are really kind of hard for me. One, because I feel like I'm way too old to be reliving that, but also like those years were so hard. And what I really love about your film is that your film is a hard one in many ways. You sort of really kind of like kind of have a like a sort of a spotlight on sort of the sort of awkwardness and sort of almost like roughness it is to sort of be a teenager. And Tell me a little bit about sort of how you kind of came to this sort of story and telling this story.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote the script as an undergraduate film student at Northwestern University in Chicago, not to be confused with Northeastern for all of you.
Sorry.
And yeah, I wrote it in a class taught by the filmmaker Stephen Cohn, who's also a queer filmmaker. The class was called Writing the Micro Budget Feature. So I was thinking about small stories. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of where like the framing of like the one location, the one day came from. And then when I was thinking about like what kinds of stories like really happen in a day, I was thinking so much about, I was 19 at the time, and I was about to turn 20 while I like took the class. And I was thinking so much about how like when you're younger, when you're a teenager, like a single day feels like it changes your whole life. So I think that sense of scale pushed me forward into telling this kind of story. And what was interesting as I wrote it was that a lot more people connected to this experience, these sort of um, poorly balanced friendships, these sort of like huge, like romantic and intimate experiences that you have and you don't understand, but you have to like be normal, but you don't know what normal is. Like that, those kinds of feelings, I think really resonated with people, especially thinking of themselves in that time frame, that end of high school time frame. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I worked on the script for the rest of college. That was about like 2 years. And then when I was graduating, I really wanted to make it. And along with our co producers, Madison Ginsburg and Dasha Gorin, we sort of set off to figure out like how we were going to tell this story. And that's really where Olivia comes in. So I, though I wrote it and knew I would be, producing it, I wanted to see like how someone else would see the story. And so then I tried to connect with Olivia, and we always tell this story. So I'm so sorry if you've been like watching us on YouTube, but like I don't know how to copy and paste, horrible skill for a writer. And I misentered Olivia's email address when I tried to send them the script. So I thought they passed, like respectful ghost. But instead, Dasha was like, let me try one more time. Dasha, much better at copying and pasting, got the script to Olivia. And as always, Olivia, you want to go from there?
And
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, I think, in that we kind of like tell the story of this film so many times. But yeah, it is really interesting, I think, as a coming of age film, because nothing truly, I think nowadays coming of age sometimes is like a big traumatic event, like world shattering, like death or illness or something. Um, and that's not what it is. It's more like an emotional arc. Um, and taking the emotions of teenagers in their everyday lives seriously as something that is a really life altering event. So I think that's what I really liked about the script overall. And it was so funny. So even though the log line initially, I was like, oh, I don't know how I would direct this or what it really has to do with me. I read it, I laughed a lot. I had a lot of ideas, especially like for the zit scene, I think was the first one where I started taking notes of like, oh yes, we need to see the zit first and the pus come out and everything. Um, so by the end, once I finished the read, I had all these ideas that then I brought to Jess, and Jess just kept saying yes to.
Nice.
um, yeah, and so then we were kind of off to the races, us and a lot of our friends from school.
I mean, what I really love about the sort of the film too is that it looks different than anything I've seen in before, and it has that definite sort of this resonance with sort of social media, Instagram, that kind of stuff. I mean, you kind of
Mm.
reference it throughout the look of the film. What was the sort of decision to sort of like shoot it in the like the 1.1 aspect ratio and that sort of like that really kind of intimate sort of framing of it?
That was one of the first ideas I feel like I brought to Jess. And I was kind of having trouble explaining it all the way because we didn't have any examples of what that might look like. Um, but I expected two things. Like, one, that it would be something that references Instagram, like it being a square frame.
Mm,
And two, that it would kind of tighten your view on everything in the film, since essentially you can only fit like 1.5 bodies in a frame that's that small.
right.
So it'd make everyone feel really isolated. Um, and that turned out and worked pretty well. I really am a big fan of a smaller frame, especially because we didn't have any money. So so it being a square, like you can really push all of your production design stuff in and really capture exactly what you want. So it worked out in our favor in a major way.
No, I mean it's really kind of like it does sort of capture that sort of intimacy, but also this sort of elation. Because I mean, the day that we're spending with these teens is really intense. We're in an intense state. I mean, we've got like sort of the suicide, grieving, which I think is such a really like I mean, I know in my own high school sort of experience, we had somebody who killed themselves as well. So, I mean, teen suicide is such a
Mm,
serious sort of thing, but it's interesting to get the sort of perspective from teens. Because, I mean, yes, it is really tragic, but it is also like someone that they didn't really know or didn't like, or like you have to sort of spend the
mm,
day sort of like sitting there thinking about this person that you're like, I don't really care. And it's really honest, like, which I thought was kind of refreshing. As brutal as it is, it's super sometimes teens are the brutalist. Uh, and that's kind of okay because I feel like sometimes that like we need that sort of like that like ripping off the sort of band-aid of it all.
mm.
Which I found was really kind of refreshing. So I guess one of my like one I want to also compliment on the casting of your two leads. I mean, what an amazing job by both actors. And tell me a little bit about what went into sort of the casting of both Carrie and Hannah.
Yeah, totally. So we worked with a casting director who was another classmate of ours, Noah Isabella. She's based in New York. And it was exciting because Noah had worked on shows like High Maintenance on
Mhm.
HBO. And so she had seen like so many different types of people embody so many types of characters. Like when you're casting the world of that show, that's different every episode. I don't know. Noah had like a huge index of people, and she was very open to like exploring different ways these characters could be. Like I feel like Olivia, I feel like she gave us so many options to be like,
Mhm.
this is a shade of Carrie or this is a shade of Carrie. And how we ended up with Rachel, who plays Hannah, and Madeline, who plays Carrie, is through realizing that something that we connected to in them was like their sense of humor in their seriousness. Like we took them seriously when they were hurt, but we also knew that they could be playing the next minute. And because we didn't know exactly like how the filming was going to go emotion wise, because of so many problems with the location and everything, location was under construction, all that kind of stuff. uh, it's good to have these two really flexible, really funny actors playing teenagers. Like I think that was
Mhm.
such a huge benefit.
Do they know
Yeah.
each other beforehand? Because there's a really good sort of unspoken sort of chemistry between them that's really kind of great. that
That
you
comes from
captured.
them just being good people, honestly. Like they met like the day before the shoot, possibly the night before the shoot in a costume fitting. And then they just went off and watched like Game of Thrones together and ran some of their lines. And luckily they like really did get along and click on set, which was like a huge relief, I think, for me as a director, because that was something that we were pretty worried about. But yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean the what was really also really great is because they're none of them are bad kids, but they
Mm.
definitely have this sort of like toxicity to their friendship. And one of the reviews said that Carrie and Hannah are not bad kids, but like a lot of teenagers, they're governed more by their hormones than by um, Judaic law. um, but this sort of like this toxicity in all of their sort of friendships is kind of prevalent through the movie. Why was it so important to shine a light on that?
That's a great question. I think something I was just talking to my partner about this. I think that's something that's hard is that like we go through life not wanting to make a mistake so badly that
Mm.
you end up hurting people by accident like all the time
Mm.
like because you can't always consider everyone. And I think the time where you're really like stumbling over huge blocks is like when you're a teenager.
Mm.
Like you're so wrapped up in your own world you really can't see how anyone else has it worse than you do. And that, and or the opposite, you can't imagine how someone has it better than you do. You have the best life that's ever been lived, right? And so I think those poles are so important for me to explore, like watching how the people sort of like almost like billiards balls like knock off of each other through that energy. Like those are the like very chaotic exchanges that like I think make up a teenage experience is acting like kind of toxic and weird because you don't want to get hurt so you're hurting other people. And I feel like we never see that in teen movies. I feel like in teen
Yeah.
movies we're like those are the mean girls, that's the hot guy, and this is who I am, and it's like that's not really what the experience of being a teenager is like.
No, because I mean,
No.
even the mean girls sort of have like a depth to them that we don't ever see. We only see that surface. So I applaud you for like sort of like going and getting that sort of depth of the sort of that teenage experience. Um, so I guess maybe my next question is to sort of like build on that is we often don't see teenagers or even portrayals in general of black, queer, and Jewish all at once. What was sort of the impetus to sort of like kind of do that sort of intersectionality, give that a little bit of a spotlight?
I think for me it was just kind of normal. Like I don't know. I do know like Black Jewish people. I know like queer Jewish people. There's no one way that Judaism or queerness, for that matter, looks, but there is one way that it's portrayed in media.
Okay.
Um, so for me, I mean, like, what do I know besides like a Black queer teenage experience? And so I think when I read Carrie, especially, like I did really connect with her and like see myself in her. So then we kind of brought that into the casting rounds. But we did open casting, I think, for pretty much every character. And wanted to see like who understood the role like culturally, who understood like emotionally the role, and Madeline was the best.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, she was. I mean, she was so great, and I'm all for like we want diverse portrayals because it just makes everyone's life richer, and I
Mm.
just think I'm so tired of the same, and again I applaud you for sort of like pushing that forward and sort of using your own sort of experience and kind of sharing that with us because again it makes us all a little bit richer. So thank
Mm.
you, Olivia. Um, I guess, but also too, what again with sort of like filmmaking and the sort of film industry being very male and very like male gaze and stuff like that, to actually have a sort of crew like director, writer, producer, and a lot of your crew as female. What was that sort of energy on the set like, and
Mm.
two, how do you think that um, sort of shaped your film in many ways?
a good question. I've never like worked with that many dudes on my set. I kind of don't know. I kind of don't know like what it would be like otherwise, because really what it is like I work with my friends. And so I try to like center that and that energy so that, you know, even though I live in Los Angeles and we were going somewhere, I had not been to Rochester before. So I kind of wanted to make sure that the crew that we had on board were people who would be like grounding and calm and kind. um, because this is like a big first for a lot of us. Like it was most people's first feature film, and yeah, most people's first time in Rochester. And we were going to be staying in Jess's parents' home and shooting in Jess's childhood synagogue. Like I didn't want any funny energy. um, so yeah, we tried to go for people who would be, you know, respectful of the space and who would be flexible. Um, yeah, and that's kind of what we got. But yeah, I don't know. People do complain about the film bros. So
Well, no,
I
there's, I
guess we
mean,
made a good choice.
there's a lot though. That, I mean, that's really sort of the thing is like, you know, again, that sort of a tired trope of, you know, the boys club and stuff like that. It's like,
Mm,
be done with it. Be done with it. We're ready for the ladies to take it up to the next level, because there's a sort of a especially in the queer films, like I feel like the female gaze is often it just fits better, I feel like. And not saying that men make bad films or whatever, like, but I just feel like there's a sort of sensitivity and there's a sort of a roundedness that happens when there is a like sort of like a synergist female production that happens, and it kind of it comes out to us as the audience.
I think
mm,
something with our film in particular is that we had a very young crew. I think
mm,
that is also maybe an energy you're sensing, or at least an energy I'd love to like bring into the mix of this conversation. Because I think it's less so that it exists in this sort of, not to say you said it was a gender binary, but there is some sort of implication of binary there. But I think in the case of how we made our film, as Livy said, it was a lot of people's first film, but it was also like, it's the first time I'd been working in what is a professional environment with mostly people my age,
Hmm.
like
mhm,
all around me. And I think because of that, we did sort of have that feeling of like play, experiment, fail, try again, make it work. And I think that's inherent to the indie film process, right? You don't have someone coming down to set with a big like check, you know, you just have you and your friends and the people your friends ask for favors and the people who showed up because I posted in my high school Facebook group. Like, I think it's such a thing where, especially because I feel like so much queer cinema is being made by younger people or people celebrating elders. I think it's like a really
mm.
exciting time to be making film with people. I don't know. I now I'm about to talk about TikTok, so stop me. But like, I think it's exciting as queer filmmakers like us, like to see people learning like you can sort of tell your story, and the weirder it is to you and the better it feels, like that really comes across in the kind
Mm.
of things we're seeing right now. Because
Mhm,
Olivia and I have learned from our mistakes, or at least we're trying. When we started this phase of the film, this festival phase, I at least was very much like, we need to come off like an indie film. Like, we need to be like, it's an indie film and you know it and it's professional and you love it. But it's like, I don't know. I'm in my mid 20s. Like I like all kinds of stuff. Like I respect something I see on YouTube as much as I see in the theater. So I don't want to come
mhm.
off like creating gates I don't need to uphold. And that's my rant.
That's amazing. I know, and I feel like that's true too. I think that like in our sort of modern sort of culture, there is a sort of like an evening of the playing field where that making telling your story is a lot more accessible than it has been in the past. Like, you know, we all have a camera that we're carrying around in our phone, that we can shoot, that's actually pretty good quality for most people's phones. And and I've seen enough sort of, again, YouTube, TikTok, things like that people are sort of embracing their weird, and I just feel like that makes us all a little bit better. It makes us all a little weirder, which is good. But always makes it makes the sort of the tapestry that we're weaving as a culture all that better, and all that sort of like prettier, because it more rich, I guess would be the better word, um, because we are sharing our sort of authentic experiences.
Mm.
What was it like shooting in your childhood synagogue? That sounds like a lot to unpack.
And Olivia helps me unpack it every step of the way. It was so amazing. I mean, I'm so happy we got to do it, especially in, not to be like in these times, but it's like, I don't know, the next time I'm going to go to a synagogue, and like, it was such a huge part of my experience growing up, was existing in that environment. And so being able to share it with other people was huge. Sure, having my Hebrew school teacher pass me and ask me what I was doing there. And when I said making a movie, she's like, what, to go to some festival like Sundance? I was like, I hope so. What do you want me to say? No. But like, that was a very humbling experience. It was incredibly humbling, but it was really rewarding. And I have to say, there's something very special with showing a bunch of people something that would have really embarrassed you as a younger person. It's very gratifying. Like, I think if I could have thought like, oh, my cool friends from Northwestern are now, they have to see what my Hebrew school classroom looked like, I think I would have been really embarrassed if you told me that was going to happen to me. But instead I was like, doesn't this look like how it's supposed to look?
It's kind of, it's, I mean, you gave, and then you gave it to us zits and all, like, like really.
That's all Olivia. Olivia, you gotta talk about the zit. The zit is
Are
so
you,
Big
are
on
you
the
a
zit.
are you a Pimple Popper fan?
I, well, I think more than that, I think I wish I had seen more zits in media when I was growing up, because I thought I was the only person in the universe with terrible skin. And I remember like being angry with my parents for like giving me genetically bad skin.
so harsh.
And you know, and so it was something where I was like, oh, this is something I've not seen for some reason. Like we've seen so much in film. We've gone over the same thing like time and time again in so many different films across the budgets, but we haven't seen acne, you
It's
know? So when the time came, I was like, okay, we're gonna make this zit work. And so we hired like a makeup artist to make a prosthetic zit for Rachel's actually perfect skin. And and we had it like grow over the course of the film and then burst. We used some VFX to get like the the
the
pus, like
splatter,
the yeah,
Yeah.
which is
it to
the
look like
satisfying
real.
part of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we had our poor production designer like poised on the side of the mirror to like flick some juice at the mirror
Oh.
to make it a whole moment. Yeah. So it's kind of, there's like a little arc with the zit too.
No, it does, and it's funny because it does grow throughout,
As
which
the
is kind of,
tension builds. Yeah.
and it's over a day too, which is kind of amazing. It's like the time lapse.
Oh, I know, really. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say, I don't know what's wrong with my skin, but if I get a pimple, if you give me that work, I'll have the same exact trajectory as that pimple in the movie. If I'm anxious, that thing is going through every stage of life.
It's true. Toothpaste, like like everything.
Oh my God.
That's the thing. I mean, I think coming of age, like people do assume it's something for young people or that acne is something for young people. But the truth is, like, we don't know that much about hormones and how they work, to tell you the truth. Like, we don't know that much about our emotions. Like, we go through the same things as adults, but
No, I mean,
you know.
I mean, that's the thing too, is like you made, even if it's a coming of age story, it is kind of
Mhm.
universal, too. And it, what I kind of took from this afternoon's watch of it is that sort of like this, that made me sort of think about relationships that I'm having, and that sort of like, do you want to put up with the sort of the toxicness and things that are out of balance? Because even though that Carrie and Hannah have been friends for such a long time, you can definitely tell that there's this unbalance, and the
Mhm.
sort of like her sort of like not Hannah's sort of I guess nonchalantness with the kiss was it's so heartbreaking. I was just like, why? Why can't you be a little bit more respectful of your friend? But I mean, that's sort of the kernel of the story is that, you know, she was so insecure and so in her own world that she couldn't even see outside of that to sort of comfort her friend who is obviously sort of really torn up about this. Um, on a day.
Um,
uh,
Honesty. Yeah, I think
Honest-
you're right. Like, I think something I've been thinking about a lot as it comes to grief. I feel like we've talked about this a couple of times, but usually we don't make it over here. Like, but there's kind of like a main plot of like a main thing that has happened, and which is that we are at a funeral because someone we knew passed away.
right.
Um, and we don't really know how to grieve that, to be honest. Like, you feel a bit of like imposter syndrome around grief sometimes, of
Hmm.
not being close enough to the person. And that's something worth talking about, actually. But let's remove ourselves from that and then be on this this beeline plot of like the drama and like, oh, now these kids over here ate a pot brownie, like this sort of like distraction and noise, because that's more normal, like that's more comfortable, that's something we know how to deal with. So then when Hannah inadvertently makes another main story
Right.
like incident of like, oh, now my friend is upset with me, possibly feeling these other feelings, like that's kind of another thing to distance herself, like to sort of disassociate from. And I think that feels like really true and honest. And I think I'm seeing that a lot these days. Like, we don't know how to grieve something properly and wholeheartedly. So let's create a bit of drama over here.
Look over
you
there.
know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Don't look here. So it's all over there.
Tough. It's
um,
tough. Adults don't know how to do this, let alone like
no,
kids.
no, no, and honestly, grieving is never easy for anybody. But I also kind of love the sort of the workshopping of the grief too, which was kind of like amazing. It's like let's fill out these 5 squares
yeah.
with the part, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that's gonna work in this crowd. But it was super interesting because obviously there, you know, you also have the teen class dynamic of the girls who know everything in the
Mhm.
front, who have to, you know, have to
Mm,
be the teacher's sort of pet. And then you have, you know, the one of those girls, you know, who's the vapor in the in the bathroom, um
mm,
who's kind of giving you 2 different sides of it, which is kind of interesting as well, because then you get the sort of intimacy of the sort of bathroom moment, uh,
mm,
of them together, but then you get the betrayal in the classroom, which is also kind of again toxic and heartbreaking and authentic, which is really kind of uh, again so many layers to this that it was true. You wrote a truly wonderful sort of portrait of friendship and coming of age.
Yeah, that was the hope, you know?
So what I
Um,
mean, as far as like the set over a day, was that something that you were thinking about when you kind of went in to
yeah,
it? Is that you wanted it to be just a day?
yeah, I'm really interested in the way that like one can experience a change in one day, because like it really hasn't happened in one day. I'll let you in on a little secret. Things have been brewing before this, don't you think? Um, but it's like it so feels like one day. So by setting it in one day, we give the audience that feeling,
Mm.
even though it's
mm,
like, you know, we've all had relationships go different directions. Like
Mhm.
it has a buildup, but it's like interesting to just get in on it when it seems like, how could this have happened?
Right.
mm.
Um, any so oh my god, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. My the one of the things that sort of really kind of stuck with me too is that we only get that sort of teenage perspective. Like we have a little bit of the adults that are there, which are
Mm.
more like gossiped about. um was that also a choice too, is to not sort of really have like that sort of adult sort of dictatorness or parental sort of vibe in there as well?
That was interesting. Some of that changed in the edit, because we actually had shot some of Carrie's dad, who you then don't see in the final film, but was a very sweet man, and a great actor. But yeah, I think we wanted to keep kind of that narrow focus on just both Hannah and Carrie. Although we did get a really interesting moment in More Climb that I'm very proud of. It's one of my favorite moments that we shot on set with Bernadette Quigley, um, because I think Jessie did a really good job of writing her character to be funny, like, oh yeah, here's these handouts. But at the end of the day, that is something that is kind of helpful, like having sort of scripts that you go through of, this is how we get through this together. These are the right things to say. This is like the whole like process and tradition that goes along with it. Um, so at the end of the day, like she really is trying her best. And then we get this one moment where she realizes like that's actually just not good enough. Like it didn't prevent this young person from dying. And now she's lost control of this classroom,
Right.
ostensibly. But then, she's just like a little person, like everyone else. Um, just got back. Yeah, I don't know. So that was
No, I kind
that
of
was
love that.
that was a one adult.
Yeah, and I love the moment too that like sort of Carrie kind of stands up and
Mm,
sort of like calls it out and like this is all bullshit, and
mm.
and then we're all kind of pantomiming that the sort of the emotions, and I thought that that was also really kind of real too, as far as one grieving and also two the sort of situation that they're all kind of like thrust into. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, just again, so much to that. Again, there's so much to sort of unpack with this as well. One of the other things I really sort of enjoyed about the film and sort of the construction of it is too is like when you got that kiss and the sort of the frame expanded, and then you got all the really great animation too. What was the sort of the decision to sort of put all this sort of I guess the animation is the sort of the fantasy sort of world, which fit really nicely
Mm.
juxtaposed against the sort of the realness of what was going on. Sort of what was the decision for the sort of different types of animation that you were using?
Yeah, I mean, you just reminded me of something actually that was like a purposeful decision. So the whole film is static, like it's shot on a tripod. So with that first kiss scene, I thought that would be a really good time for there to be movement for the first time. So we intended it to be like a 360 dolly that we would shoot, but then the space didn't permit that to happen. So we ended up putting the camera on a trash can and like partially going around the
Nice.
girls. But that, I mean, it worked out in the end. So yeah, I wanted that to be sort of like where we've had like this kind of constrained, claustrophobic feeling the whole time for you to finally get like a breath of fresh air and the perspective to change. And for it to literally be moving, and also as it feels moving.
Right.
Um, it's
Well,
yeah,
I
we
mean,
don't have very much music either. That was like another time where we have like a little music going.
you should patent that trash can effect because it was really lovely. Like seriously, and
Nicola
actually
DeCastro.
because it really felt like that sort of the rush that you get when you kiss somebody too, which was kind of really lovely. You felt that sort
Mm.
of that emotion in that kiss, which was kind of nice. And then you kind of went into the sort of claymation kind of thing too, kind of disturbing the faces disappearing. But I totally understood that the sort of that as well because they were mushing into each other. But yeah, I love that, and also the sort of the painting part as well as sort of
Mm.
Hannah's sort of fantasy with Tristan was really kind of lovely as well.
Yeah, yeah, we wanted their imaginations to be like unrestricted, basically. So even though the main film takes place in this small aspect ratio, their imaginary worlds can be colorful and have all this dimension and be moving around. Um, and we wanted Hannah and Carrie's to look very different because they are very different. So yeah, I'm glad you like that.
It was good. It was good. Um, so I guess this is the sort of the question that I ask everybody that has attended is pandemic obviously hard for everybody, and actually hard and difficult, but also couldn't be inspiring, etc. Um, how are you doing? How have you been doing with the pandemic? And two, what is sort of next? Have you been sort of working on stuff, using this time to sort of like just reflect, etc.? What-
Cool. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. My parents are both doctors, so it's been a kind of stressful time, especially before they were vaccinated, and sort of the
Mhm.
stress on them, I think, has reverberated out through my life. Um, it also has been hard as a person who cares a lot about other people to sort of have to be doing that kind of mental gymnastics about like, how do I care for myself? How do I care for everybody else? How do I do this? How do I care for my community? Like all of that. But yeah, I feel very lucky to have been able to talk to people about something like this film during this time,
Hmm.
because it reminds us that like there are ways that we can work on things together even when we're not together. So that's the very deep, real answer. Um, and creatively, I'm working on a television show. It's also very queer. It's also very, very Jewish.
Yay.
That's about, it's like a revisionist history of my own family history. So
Hmm.
I'm 24. When my grandma, Alina, who I was very, very close with, when she was 24, she had just survived the Holocaust.
Oh wow.
So, so it's sort of a conversation about uh, what kind of TV do we make about 20 somethings, and what if we were making different kinds of stuff?
Oh wow. I mean, that's so fascinating, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing it. So
Yeah, well, we'll see, but that's where I'm at right now. So why live in the tragedy we're in now? Go back.
there's more tragedy to discover.
Yeah, trust me, I've been learning that.
Wow. Um, and I guess how am I? I'm doing pretty good. You caught me on a good day. I over the course of the pandemic, like I've been spending a lot of time with my cat too. I love your cat, like popping in and out. I think that's so funny.
He's like, what?
Um, and yeah, I got on TikTok during the pandemic, like everyone else, which has been really cool. I think as a queer person, seeing like cross generationally all these queer people, like in all these different places around the world, like in conversation with one another, talking about really cool stuff. Um, so that kind of inspired a new show that I'm working on that hopefully we can talk about very soon. But that one will be entirely animated. Um, and working on a new feature too. And what else? I learned how to skateboard. I have a big garden now. I inherited a garden.
Nice.
um, yeah, it's been like the best of times, the worst of times, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the roller coaster of it, because and it's I love that you have a big garden now, because I feel like my year has been about planting seeds, uh,
Hmm.
like literal not real seeds, but actually like seeds for things to grow in the future.
Totally.
I
um,
feel that. It's time
but
to
I
be
love
thoughtful. Yeah.
I don't have a green thumb, so like a physical garden is like I tried. So I always appreciate people who can actually like make it happen, because for me it's just
Mm.
like it doesn't. But I'm glad that sort of there's been a little bit of thriving going on, because that's exciting to hear, because there has been such a it has been such a hard year and a half.
Mm.
Oh, are we said 5 years? How long has it been?
I don't know. I can't
Right.
believe it's mid-April. It really
I
blows my
know.
mind.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
weird for us too, because this is our usual time that we have our festival.
Of course.
Mm.
And then last year was sort of like we had a full slate to go, and then it was like wah, wah, wah,
Yeah,
Oh
everything
yeah,
locked
wow.
down, which is it is what it is. So,
it's true.
but yeah, we
I'm glad you're back. I'm
I
glad
know,
yeah,
you
and we're
made it
so happy
back.
to be a part of it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we are too. I mean, we did do our first virtual festival in July, which was kind of great because we were like, we
Mhm.
have all these films,
Yeah,
we need to get them to the people,
right.
But yeah, we're super glad to have you as part of our 37th edition. Tahara is really kind of amazing and special. You guys did such a great job. Thank you for
Thank you.
for
Thank
telling
you.
authentic stories, interesting coming of age stories. um, and do you think we'll get to see more of Hannah and Carrie?
I don't know. I
Maybe
don't
in real
know.
life.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we're hoping to kind of lock some distribution for the film too. That's the other thing that we're working on. So we're kind of in the throes of navigating that, I think a bit more intentionally now. And we're excited to bring it to people.
Yeah, and again, so if you haven't seen Tahara, please, 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 you have until the 18th to watch it on Zerb. If you want tickets or full festival information, go to www.wickedqueer.org. Please see it. And Jess and Olivia, thank you so much for spending time. I appreciate you so much for spending these moments with me and kind of unpacking this with me because I was, while it's still fresh in my brain. Jacques is very happy as well, obviously.
Jacques.
Um,
Uh,
and again, thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to seeing what's next from you both.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.